All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the AltaVista webinar today on improving closing ratios in 2026. My name is Aaron Hockel. I'll be the moderator today. Couple quick things before we really dive into all of this today. First thing is we are going to have a Q&A at the end, so please stick around. We're not going to answer or take questions during the presentation, but there is a chat feature and a Q&A feature in the Teams window. So if you click that and submit your question, we will kind of go through them at the end. We look forward to presenting. And the last thing too is we're really looking today at talking about, ways to refine our skills and improve our skills. We're not here to teach you something brand new, but really just look at how we get better at the things we already know how to do as sales professionals. So the agenda for today and what we're here to learn. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one, but I will emphasize number one, right? We're here to adopt a long-term sales mindset, going to be one of the most important things that we talk about. As we dive into the content, I do want to take a quick second to really introduce or let them introduce themselves, the other two members of the AltaVista team presenting here today. So Ray, why don't you go first? Lead us off.
Hey guys, Ray McLaughlin, managing partner. Also ex-contractor, sold in the space for over 16 years, sold anything from general contracting, electrical, painting, asphalt. Looking forward to spending some time with you today.
Awesome.
Yep, my name is Brian Dunkel, one of the partners at AltaVista as well. Coming up on over almost 20 years of sales experience, and primarily handle a lot of sales, business development, client outreach at AltaVista. So excited to speak with everyone here as well and really get this rolling.
Yeah, cool. And then my name again, Aaron Hockel. I'm another one of the partners at AltaVista. Been here since 2012, been selling the whole time. So I'm going to try to keep up with these two sales gurus that we have here today, right? So as we jump right into this, the first thing we're going to talk about, and I know this is something that Ray wants to emphasize as being very important, is, closing ratios are really going to matter in 2026. So Ray, why don't you kick us off with this one?
Yeah, I thought this would be a great place to start because we obviously know that there's a certain amount of looks we're going to get in a calendar year. We could maybe look at 2026 and think, are we going to have more looks in 26 or are we going to have less looks? More than likely you had less looks in 25 than you had in 23, 24. So let's assume we're going to have less looks in 2026. So obviously more critical to improve those closing ratios. An interesting stat that Megan found on our team is that 53% of sales professionals say it's harder to sell than it was a year ago. And I think that's a really impactful stat because we know at AltaVista, it's harder today than it was a year ago and 2 years ago. So I'm sure we felt it in our client base. Our clients have let us know that it is harder. It's more competitive. And a couple things that really come across for us is higher lead costs. So what we see internally at AltaVista is when lead costs go up, that means there's more competition for that lead, whether it be an internet lead, a Google lead. So we know the competition is there. I'm sure you're feeling it. We're hearing it from our customers. We've also heard some anecdotal stories. I remember when I was in the electrical business, I knew things were getting a little tougher when the larger companies showed up to my bid meetings. I'd have the largest electrical contractor in Baltimore who decided to show up for a $20,000 project. So we're hearing that from our clients too, that there's more attendance in bid meetings. So we know things are getting a little bit more competitive. So refining these skills, improving the closing ratios is the way we can win a better share of revenue moving forward, even if we have the same amount of looks that we had in 2024. And
yeah, well said. Brian, you got anything to add?
No, I think that's the main takeaway that we're going to really harp on is how can we get just incrementally better every day in every part of the sales process, right? And if you look at it, a rising tide lifts all ships. So if we are focused, on incremental wins in each step of the process, we're going to close more business.
Cool. Yeah, I think my only thing here is if we're going to continue to eat and the pie is getting smaller, we got to do what we can to get a bigger piece, right? So very important here. One thing really fast too, we would talk about is if you enjoy the webinar today, we are kind of launching an AltaVista University to kind of teach some of these things ongoing. Brian Dunkel, I know this is something that you've been involved with. If you want to talk about this for maybe a minute.
Absolutely. No, this is something we are extremely excited about. I think there's a lot of value here. So AltaVista University, I mean, really at the high level, sales training, sales advice, sales best practices, really for all contractors, and really especially for our customers and clients, right? The end goal, and again, the end goal of this presentation, right, is to help our clients close more business, right? Be more successful by implementing scalable processes, scalable tools. So really, I mean, that's really AltaVista University in a nutshell, right? Helping, just refining, getting better every day.
Oh, right. You got anything?
Yeah, I think it's something where we've had a lot of feedback from our clients. Obviously, we've got our podcast. I've had a lot of clients ask about trainings. We could do something from a new hire training seminars to refining your skills. I know I've been in the game for 35 years and I'm learning every day. So sometimes it's just great to have other folks in the room just sharing ideas. And I think that's really what we're doing here. And again, our experience is in contracting. So we've got a great lens into how to improve those closing ratios and make skills better.
Cool. Yeah. So as we look at the first big kind of chunk of what we're going to talk about today, we're really talking opportunity intake, right? And kind of really how do we set the tone from the very first interaction, right? So really fast, what we talk about here is that lead comes in, whether someone calls you for the first time, it's an email, you get an inquiry through your web form, right? When someone reaches out to kind of say, hey, I want to work with XYZ contracting, how do we go from there, right? And so, Brian, I know this is something you spend a lot of time on and you've worked with our team on, so why don't you kind of high level this one for us?
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, obviously it's spelled out here, but I stress this all the time. You can only make a first impression once, right? So how do we make sure that that first impression, again, whether it's a phone call, whether it's an email, we're putting our best foot forward. On top of that, right, making sure we are reaching out as fast as possible, right? We know everyone is busy, right? We know we're out here, we're bidding jobs, we're working payroll, right? We're scheduling jobs, estimating, all that good stuff. But again, if we are, again, paying for marketing, paying, to generate business, or people are organically coming to us, speed to lead matters. How fast are you reaching out to that buyer? We're not letting this sit for a day, 2 days, 3 days, et cetera. We're getting in touch, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours max, right? And just being consistent throughout that entire process, right? That is extremely important. And Ray, I don't know if you have anything else you want to touch on there.
Yeah, I think it's really important because if we looked at our closing ratios, let's say our standard process is to follow up with a lead within 48 hours. But we changed our process to say we're going to follow up with that lead within 24 hours. What's the impact on the closing ratio? We know the closing ratio will improve with that one tweak to our system. So, some clients might call the first minute, some might have a end of business as a final timeline. But the quickness in which we can respond will only improve the closing ratio. So we can look at it like, well, it's harder to get to that lead or that opportunity within the same business day, but the closing ratio will go up. Matter of fact, it's time is money in that equation. And additionally, we have this, and I know I'm jumping the gun here a bit, but what's the first touch look like? And I think it's a phone call. And if you remember one thing that I say today, it's a phone call, because there's only one place we can influence as salespeople, and that's on the phone. So our preference is to get them on the phone. Great if we can get them via email. Great if we can get them via text. But if we get them via phone call, we can influence, we can get more information that we need to help the close later. So there's where I am, Brian. Keep going. Sorry I went so long there.
No. I think my last one on this thing is that last bullet about complete information, right? So, AltaVista plays Big Brother every once in a while where we're recording calls and we're listening to things. And the amount of times where we'll hear people call and, we're listening to a conversation between a prospect and an AltaVista customer, and candidly, the AltaVista customer doesn't get the address for the job. They don't get the email. They don't get all the details that are really going to be necessary to, when you give it to the salesperson, right, to make that first call and to make that first point of contact. happen, right? So I think that's the one thing I would stress on here too, is if you just call and say, what's your email? Billy will reach out to you. That's not really, it should be, what's your email? What's your this? What's the address? What are you looking for? You know what I mean? There should be, especially if they're calling your business, because if they're calling, the need is very real, right? So I think my big bullet on this one is, get that information. And then to Brian Dunkel's point, process. It should be the same questions every time, kind of over and over again. So either you guys got anything else on this one?
Yeah, I think it's just complete contact information, because we may not win if our cold closing ratio is 30%, maybe it's 40%, maybe it's 20%. There's a high probability we're not going to win this job. Let's accept that as good salespeople. A cold deal, you got, let's say 30, maybe as high as 40 if you're really good. But so if you're not going to win here, right, you're not going to win on the first one. If you don't have complete contact information, you're going to vaporize that next opportunity because you're not going to be in contact. Now, we're going to arguably still touch them from the AltaVista side, but we'd like to see you have a reach out. So without complete contact information, I think we've lowered our closing ratio.
100%. So the next one we're going to jump to is actually, kind of something that the three of us coined together in our conversation, which was this long-term sales mindset of, and as salespeople, and myself included, we're all guilty of chasing what's right in front of us and working the hottest opportunity and working on the things that we think are going to close the soonest, which are all important, but really the long-term mindset of, I'm trying to take this to a relationship, and it's going to be, to Brian Dunkel's prior point, these incremental wins, right? So this was one we kind of all put our brains together on. Ray, Brian, any comments on this one?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. This all leads back to process, right? And again, I think any good salesperson or any person out here that is looking to close business, you need to have a great process. That process can look differently for everyone. But for me, over time, you should develop the process that works for you, right? And you can tweak that here and there. My point is, and I'm going to steal what I said in a podcast, a Nick Saban quote, right? Results are BS. It's all about process, right? So never focus on the close, right? For us, and to Ray's point, it's about building relationships. It's about touch points. We're not going to win 100% of every opportunity or every deal that comes in, but we don't want to burn any bridges either, right? We want to stay in communication. We want to keep consistent touch points. And for me, that's the definition of an incremental win. Touch points, being in contact, dropping emails here and there, just being in touch.
Yeah.
I'll jump in, Aaron. And I want to preface this: if we're selling in a one-off situation or we're selling in the residential space, you have to focus on the close because it's going to go away. So this is more about the relationship sale that we're covering today. So just for clarity on that point, I'll share a story, and I shared this on the podcast. Is my son's in sales now, right? And he's out cold calling, and he did really well. My advice then was, don't focus on the close. And it really didn't make sense. And it sort of doesn't make sense when you say it. But if you focus on the close on those first 2 or 3 deals, you stop the process. To what Dunkel said, trust this process, trust the pipeline, right? Trust is in your pipeline, understanding that my pipeline has X deals in it. My close rate is this. If I continue to push deals into the pipeline and I continue to improve my closing ratio, you're evolving as a salesperson and a sales leader. And so when people say don't focus on the close, look, if you need to deal to keep your people busy, then you better focus on the close. But for the fact of this dialogue is, if we're going into the plan of our dreams, I'd rather see you close something small than getting some $500,000 RFP. Close something small, close something actionable, something that you can do really, really well, impress, build rapport. So when that bigger RFP comes up, you're in the right position. Because if you're in position for $500,000 RFP on the first meeting, your closing ratio is below 30%. And that's going to be hard to work that through. So again, don't focus on the close, focus on the relationship, focus on the rapport. And if you lose the first one, it's not done. No. You're just building a process around how to get into the next one.
Absolutely. Cool. this is a hot question, something that we got ahead of time, something I've had people ask, and right, when we don't reach the prospect, right? So Ray, Brian, I'm going to let you two tackle this one, whichever one of you wants to jump on this first.
Don't go ahead.
Yeah. Again, this all goes back to process, right? And this all goes back to giving up, right? So, for me, when you talk about marketing or you talk about sales or business development, right? The first and foremost thing is identifying who the right client is, right? And that's obviously what we're doing on our client's behalf. So my point is, an opportunity comes in, maybe you lob a phone call, maybe you send an email. It should never stop there, right? It should only stop once you've made communication, right? And this all goes back to incremental wins, incremental touch points, right? Whether it's a phone call today, an email tomorrow, a phone call, 2 days later, a LinkedIn connection request, right? Maybe dropping something off in the mail. These are all touch points, right? And again, when we're focused on a long-term strategy, we're focused on long-term growth and a long-term sales mindset, right? These incremental wins, again, improve the closing ratio, right? As Ray talks about. And that is, I think, something that kind of will get lost here and there, right? If we're just focused on, I need to get in touch with this person, right? They haven't reached out to me. They haven't called me. I'm moving on, right? If they've reached out, they have a need. You got to remember the people we're dealing with, property managers, facility managers, plant managers, they're also busy, right? So it's your job to stay in front of them.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's the need didn't go away. And we hear this from our clients all the time. How often should we call? How often should we circle back? I think it depends on the situation. Let's give an example where a plant manager has a roof that's failing. If he didn't respond back to you on the email, the chances are that roof hasn't been fixed in 2 days. So your timeline for replying is going to be significantly longer if he's calling in for a light that doesn't work on the outside of the plant. He probably got that resolved in a few days. But the answer is you don't quit. Even if you don't get a response or you don't get into that particular RFP, you have to build a process around how am I going to continue to touch this person? This is the right client or the right prospect. You don't stop your marketing. We're going to obviously touch this prospect once a month in our flow, but we want you to establish it in your flow. And again, we had a client last month tell us that they had a really good industrial lead come in, and they did a really good follow-up process of phone call, email, text, phone call, email, text for like 2 weeks, and they didn't hear anything. And the next month, when the AltaVista email hit their inbox, it was convenient for them to reply. But our clients come to us and say, these people aren't in the need anymore. And no, it's just the timing is off and you have to continue. Some of them, yeah, they might go away. But if he or she had a need for a roof on Monday, it's still going to be there next Monday and the following Monday, unless it's a repair. So just don't think because they haven't responded to you, they're not interested. It's just a way you're going to have to wrangle them in.
Yeah. One of the things on this one, and another client that we met with that runs a great sales organization with a great sales leader, he said one of his most successful salespeople does his own kind of mass check-in email to all of his contacts and Rolodex every month on his own. And I think that's bullet, 2 on here. And we're not here just to read the bullet points to you, but, just an email to everybody you've come in contact with or your kind of customers. Hey, I'm just checking in to see if you have a need or you have something, right? That's a really powerful way to stay in front. And candidly, if you do it on the first business day of the month, they might say, oh, that's the same guy who emails me on the first of the month every year. But you know what? When that need arises, squeaky wheel gets the grease. They see that you're hungry. They see that you want to work with them. And so I think that's one of the bullets on here that I would say is really a very actionable thing that people can put into their process right now, where if you're just consistent about touching that Rolodex to see who has a need every month, you're going to get more opportunity and you're going to close more opportunity, right? So I think that would be my big one on here.
I have one last thing. One last thing. And this, I don't think we're going to touch on this, but that's a good point too on lost proposals, right? Just follow up, staying in touch, an email here or there. Again, if you've made contact, if you've built a relationship, if you've been on site, just because you've lost doesn't mean you're going to lose in the future. So I think that's critically important as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's really the most important thing, honestly, is this lost follow up. We had our second client, still a client today. 13 years ago, I asked how many proposals have you lost in the last 10 years, and are you touching any of those people? The number was 13,000 people he had given proposals to in 10 years that he hadn't gotten, he didn't win on, and he had no process for that, and that's where you're losing out, because those are there and they're right in front of you. So getting these core prospects into a monthly outreach from each rep is, I think, probably one of the most important things you can do. And you do it via email very quickly, and your data sizes are so small that you don't have to worry about how do I deliver a few hundred emails, because obviously we're delivering tens of thousands of times.
Yep. Cool. This is the next section, right? This is just some actionable takeaways on sort of this last kind of CRM opportunity intake section here. So Brian, you want to run us through?
Yeah. I mean, again, just reiterating everything we've talked about. And again, the focus of this webinar is to have actionable takeaways for everybody, right? So, again, touch points, connecting with every prospect on LinkedIn, obviously very important, as we talked about, and getting in touch with those prospects, those buyers, as soon as we can, right? As soon as those opportunities come in, as soon as those organic form fills come in, we're reaching out. Someone on the team is reaching out. Preaching consistency across all sales levels, right? And then having that process, right? Those monthly touch-ins for, prospects, past prospects, lost proposals, you name it, just being consistent with the follow-up, being consistent with touch points, right? We know there's going to be a need. We just need to fill it when it's available.
Oh, Ray, you got anything on this one? Any action items for him?
Yeah, I think just sharing a LinkedIn story, because it makes perfect sense to connect, right? I mean, you're not going to get a full connection, right? I mean, you might get half, you might get a third. But I had a contact that I connected with on LinkedIn. They were liking my post, and my posts are all about AltaVista. But it was great to see that one of our business, actually customers, was really engaged with my post. I mean, that's a big win. So it's not going to change it materially, one contact, one connection. But if you do it as a process and you're sharing content, just another way to keep contact, keep a touch. And it's all about touches, right?
Yeah.
So the long-term game is about touches, and the more we touch and the variety of mediums we use to touch, the more success we're going to have in the long term.
Yeah. One sneaky last thing on the LinkedIn and the value of the connection is, I'm sure someone out there will nod in agreement when I say, man, these property and facility managers, they move around a lot and they turn over and they change jobs. And when you're all of a sudden wondering why John Doe is no longer at this company or this building, if you're connected on LinkedIn, it is a place to go check to see maybe where he went. Maybe he's got his new updated corporate email on there. You can send him a message on there. So it is, in one way, another little valuable tidbit there on the LinkedIn, and kind of, it's not just about the immediate, it can be about the long term too, right? So cool. So as we jump to the next one, the most disciplined salesperson, and honestly one of the most disciplined people I've ever met, is Brian Dunkel. He is a farmer. I think he wakes up at 4:30 most mornings. So if you're, don't even get involved in text messages with him, because he does wake up and respond right away. But he's going to talk about some CRM discipline, what that means, and kind of really some simple habits that will improve sales performance.
Absolutely. So again, my assumption is a majority of our clients are going to have a CRM, right? If you don't, let's talk, because we need that, moving forward, especially in 2026. So, the term CRM discipline, again, it's the basic idea, right, that your CRM is only as good as the data you put in it, right? The process behind, guiding the use of your CRM, and then your team's adoption, right? And the discipline using it. So, I mean, everyone needs to be on the same page. Everyone needs to be pulling the same rope, right? Because again, if we have accurate data in our CRM, if we have actionable tasks in our CRM, things are not going to fall through the cracks, right? And it gives you opportunity, one, to be, more creative, right, in outreach, but then also, two, to make sure that everyone within your sales organization is all on the same page, right? And I know, Ray, there's a lot of stuff on the CRM side that you always like to talk about as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think this is really a critical bucket for our customers. I think a lot of our customers have CRMs, but they don't use them appropriately. They're being used as sort of a contact manager. They're not integrated throughout the organization. And what I would say is that think about it from a capacity standpoint. How many sales reps are working at 100% capacity today? The answer is zero. Probably nobody, right? So if you're working at say 60, 70% capacity within your org, within the lead flow that you're able to generate or you're able to get or buy, let's say, how do you get to 100%? And the only way to do it is through organization. And that's how you're going to get to that capacity. And that capacity will then expand. And I'll share another story about my son, new sales rep at AltaVista. And he said to me, I said, look, organization is probably where you're going to be most challenged. You'll make the calls. He said, how can I mess it up with the system we have? And I didn't share that with you guys, but because his whole day is in Salesforce, he doesn't get paid unless he's logged into Salesforce doing task and follow up. So he basically said, how can I mess it up with Salesforce? And he can't, because our system is set that you're not going to have missed calls. You're not going to have missed follow ups. And if you do, your boss is going to know about it. So I challenge you, if you're not using your Salesforce or your CRM the way I just described, we need to get together and figure out how to get you there, because it's going to change your business and it's going to allow you for your folks to work at full capacity, but it's also going to allow you to take sort of B players and make them A players. And
Yeah.
I think those are really two powerful things that the CRM can do for you.
Yeah. And I think this even ties back to what we just talked about, that opportunity intake, right? We're like, let's gather this complete contact information. Where does it go? It goes in the CRM. It goes in the same way other time. I was recently with a customer and they go, man, you should see some of these emails, or the people who don't give emails or this or that, right? And I go, oh, that's crazy. In our CRM, you can't put somebody in without an email.
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah,
put somebody in without a phone number. You can't put
that's right.
somebody out. You can't even spell Fort Lauderdale with FT Lauderdale. It has to be spelled
Yeah.
FORT, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it can be set up to really make the discipline inherent, but it just ties into what we're talking about as the levels move through, right? We get that robust contact. That contact has to go right into the CRM, right? And so on and so forth. So, just a very important piece right here. Again, quick action items and actionable takeaways for people out there on the CRM. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add.
No, I do think the first bullet point is critically important, right? Company-wide, adoption. And I do know I've talked to a lot of clients, right? Maybe you have some of those seasoned sales vets, right? Been in the game 20, 30, 40 years, right? And they are staunchly against using a CRM. We all need to be on the same page, right? It's critically important, right? Because again, you need visibility, throughout these stages. It also takes the guesswork out of the process, right? So, again, I think the accuracy is critically important. And Aaron, that was a great point, right? Setting those parameters on your CRM that fields need to be, entered accurately. That kind of takes the discipline, off of your plate and puts it on the CRM's plate, right? And then again, critical things for me is the tasks and follow-ups. Again, not just using this as a contact list, using it as a prompt, a sales prompt. Hey, I spoke to John Smith in February of 2025. He wanted to connect in Q4. Well, guess what? I'm going to reach out to him a little bit before Q4 and Q3 just to check in. Little things like that only improve your sales closing ratio.
Yeah, look, just real quick, I think, like, to your point, the seasoned vet rep who doesn't embrace it, right? That's the old school mindset. I'm old school. I'm 56 years old. I've been selling in this space since I was 24 years old, and I didn't need it when I was 24, but I couldn't work at 100% capacity. And today, if I were still selling, there's no way I wouldn't be using it. I'd be using it. It would be my driver. It would drive my day. It wouldn't be an option. It would drive my day. And if I was running a sales team and I was a sales manager, it would certainly drive all my reps' days. And that way, when my rep misses a follow-up, I get pinged that day. hey, you missed a follow-up with Billy Smith. What happened? And they shouldn't miss it because it's right there. The task is set and it's a reminder. It's right there. Let it drive your day. It's not an option.
Well said.
Agreed all the way. Agreed all the way around. As we jump through, we've opportunity intake complete, CRM discipline complete. We've landed that meeting. How do we prep for that meeting, right? So I think that's kind of the next phase here. And so really just, pre-meeting preparation and how critically important that is.
Uncle, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Again, look, preparation in all walks of life are critical, right? If you're prepared, you're confident, right? If you're confident, you're going to perform. It's that easy, right? So, when we talk about preparation, that's preparation in all things, preparation in your materials, preparation in researching your client, right? Having the right questions to ask, having as many details as possible, right? And then again, having your goal, right? That also goes to, your pre-calls, your pre-qualifications. Hey, what are we talking about in this meeting, right? Does this client, go back to the roof example, does this client have a roof repair or is it a roof replacement? Could it be both, right? Maybe are they looking for a roof maintenance program, right? Bringing those details to the meeting, being prepared is only going to help you.
Yeah, I would take it a step farther. Does this prospect manage multiple properties? Which properties does he manage, he or she? Understanding the facilities themselves, looking at the Google Earth, understanding as much as you can about the buying practices, the vetting services they might use, like the Avetas of the world and the vendor cafes. Making sure you understand the entire buying process. But I think in pre-meeting preparation, other than practice, right? Because if you're not practicing on your way to every meeting, and I don't care if you're doing this for 30 years or you're doing this for 3 months, if you're not practicing on the way to that meeting, you're missing out on valuable time. I never drove to a meeting with another rep because I wanted to walk through, and the best practice I could do is figure out the objections. So my goal was to anticipate the objections, and again, you've been doing this long enough, you're going to know what these objections are. They're very common, and I would want to walk through those objections on my way, and I'd literally practice out the sales call. If I was going to a sales call today, I'd still do it. So practice and prep.
100%. So we're prepping, we're in the meeting, couple good, what to bring, rep habits.
Yeah. And this all goes back to your first impression, right? Especially face to face. And again, obviously site visits, getting on site with a client is critical, right? And again, these are simple things, but sometimes we do believe they get lost, right? So again, having, detailed marketing information, marketing decks that tell your company's vision, right? Branded attire, right? Whether that's a polo, whether that's a quarter zip, a sweatshirt, right? A hat, right? That again, actually is your business, right? You're not showing up, wearing dirty clothes or, a Ravens jersey, right? If you're in Baltimore, right? The other thing that I know Ray is really keen on, taking notes, and I'll pass that over to you, Ray.
Yeah, I had a VP at the electric company, and really smart guy, really good electrical designer, installer. He would walk a property with a plant manager, and he wouldn't take notes, and it would drive me insane. And I've heard this from other folks that we work with, and we lost a deal one time, and the reason we lost a deal, he said your guy didn't take any notes, and I had no confidence in him. So even if you don't think you need to take notes, be organized. It shows a little bit about who you are in that presentation. The other thing that I'm really keen on is, I'm sure there's a lot of Seinfeld fans out in the audience here, but we remember the Leave Behind episode where George was going to leave something behind so that he wouldn't be forgotten. And this is what this is a leave behind. So I had someone tell me they don't need a brochure or a presentation deck because it's 2025, Ray, you're antiquated. I would not walk in a meeting today and not have a leave behind. A professional deck, brochure, something about your company that's going to sit on the corner of that buyer's desk for a couple weeks. Very powerful. Certainly, you could do like a Yeti, or I love Brian's idea about always going in branded clothing. It's really important that every time you go to an event, you go to a meeting, you're wearing branded clothing. I would tell you that when I was at an event, a BOMA event, and I had that McLaughlin Electric shirt, not one person knew who I was. They didn't know my name. They just knew me as an electrician. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, one of my favorite attire stories. I meet these painters in St. Louis and I walk into the meeting and they're a big union shop and me and three of them, and I'm in a AltaVista polo and quarter zip, and all three walk in and they're in full suits, ties, dressed to the nines. And it's the first and only meeting in 12, 13 years of AltaVista where I'm like, oh my God, because, contracting is a fairly laid back
Loose.
space, loose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, compared to other, we're not lawyers or bankers, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so underdressed and I'm like kind of embarrassed and all this other stuff. And so the meeting ends and I said, hey man, what's with the suits, guys? I got to ask, like it's the first time. And they go, yeah, we just always wear shirts, ties, and jackets to everything we go to. And we're just now known as the guys in the shirts, jackets, and ties. And we walk into a bid meeting and they go, oh, that's so-and-so's bidding this or so-and-so's here. And they just, through their appearance, built a brand, built something memorable. But that was one of my favorite attire snafus, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're better served. I think you're better served with a nice polo and your logo. Your logo is very memorable, and then have the presentation materials there to leave behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Cool. Let's go to the next. Actionable takeaways, right?
Yep. Preparation is key, as we've talked about. I mean, again, knowing what you're walking into. Again, a lot of this is very simple, but I think it's important to talk through and use these as these takeaways, right? Take great notes. Again, for me, if someone's trying to sell me at my house, right, and they're detailed oriented, right, they're taking notes, they're asking questions, they're engaged, I'm more inclined to want to do business with them, right? Again, the leave behinds, having some great marketing collateral, right? And then obviously the follow-up after the fact that we'll talk about as well.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to this is a really, really cool story. Talk about a great process to close, right? This is not necessarily going to be for a big CapEx project, but something real stupid. I needed Christmas lights on my house in Florida, and I just got here, and I don't want to pay for them unless they can be put on right away. I put in a form, and the gentleman called me back from the Christmas lighting company, and I said, well, it's probably you have to come out. It's probably not worth our time to do this. He said, what's your address? He pulled up a picture of my home. He gave me the price on the phone. And I basically said, if you can get this done by Friday, I'll do this right now. That was just fantastic close process. So when you have small projects, things that are really small, work on good process that you can get closes like that really quickly.
Cool. Speaking of closes and sales process and closing, a perfect segue there. I don't know if this was intentional, Ray, but rolling right into kind of that meeting and closing ratios, right? So building a structure that creates more wins. First thing we want to talk about is what do closing ratios look like and what are some sort of expected ranges?
Yeah, I'm going to take this one. I love this one because, again, I sold for Xerox actually right out of college when I was 21 years old. So if anyone knows that if you could sell a copier in 1995, you could sell anything. And we went to Xerox U. And so we had to understand the reality of what a closing ratio looks like. I hear people tell me all the time they close 100% of the deals or 90% of the deals. Yeah, sure, within your current client base, that's achievable. But on a cold deal, let's look at a cold deal. A buyer that doesn't know you, what's your closing ratio? And we get this question all the time. So we did some homework. The irony was these were my numbers, just my gut numbers, and they were very, very close on the research. So again, on a cold deal, if you can close 40%, we think you're absolutely killing it. Acceptable 20 to 35%. And if you're at 10, and we have some clients at 10, we have some clients at 10 and they're sort of happy, we're really just encouraging them. Let's get this ratio to 15 or 20. Think about if you got each sales rep from a 10% closing ratio to 15% closing ratio, what that would do for your business. You have 5 sales reps, their pipelines are each $1 million. It's a big number. It's a huge number. So just understand that a cold closing ratio on a good sized job. I would say one thing that we have talked about briefly, let's look at the smaller stuff. If you were closing for an electrical service call with an industrial plant manager, or let's say a commercial property manager, you could close at 100% because I did that. That's what my way of getting into an account. I never wanted to get the large project first. I'd sit in a meeting. We talk about the base service needs. We had a project division and a service division, and I could always close for a service call every time. Can I have your next service call? I'll show you what I can do. And so what that did was that allowed me to impress the client very quickly. And so I'm building rapport very slowly. So when the RFP comes out for 10, 15, 20, or $50,000, I have some rapport, and I have experience within the account. What happened to my closing ratio? So for the reps that want to go big early, I get it, but take that approach. See how that works over the long term. Start small, gain small commits, small jobs, small projects, and you have to slay those jobs. You have to do a great job. Eventually, you're going to own the customer. And I did that 900 times. At McLaughlin Electric, we had one commercial customer. When we sold the company, we had 900 commercial customers that used us exclusively. And that was our process. And we got $80,000 RFPs all the time without bids because we truly had so much service work. We didn't even want to bid against 3, 4, or 5 other. We wouldn't even bid against 6 people. If you said there were 6 people bidding, we didn't show up. That's because we had such a good service network. So again, just a different way to look at it.
Cool. Right now, we're going to walk through kind of like the 8-step sales process here and some things to kind of make sure we're doing along the way in that in-person kind of sales meeting as we move through it. Brian, Ray?
I'll take this one. Yeah, because I mean we're not gonna go through this like as granular as we could at a later date. But we talked the other day on our prep meeting. You can't influence until you build rapport, and I want you to remember I said that. If you can only build rapport in your first sales call, that's a win. That's what I would call a small incremental win. If you don't have rapport and you're jumping through these steps to the sales, you're going to lose. And if you don't have rapport and you don't acknowledge that you don't have rapport, by the time you go for a micro close, it's going to fail. And then you're going to have to regroup. And the most important thing you can do in the sales process, if you follow these steps, is get that rapport build. Get agreement with the prospect. If you don't have agreement, you don't have rapport. I don't know how you're going to close, or even a micro close. And again, we're not always looking for that. You can go to the next slide, Aaron. I think it's on here. Xerox was a stage of closes. It was never I'm going to go for this massive close, right? It was pre-commits throughout the process. I'm sure you would agree that this roof is a critical function. I know that the current provider hasn't done a good job. If we could come in and do and exceed your expectations, could we have a look at this work? That's a real soft pre-commit that you could use in any industry, whether you're doing janitorial, whether you're doing roofing or electrical, it wouldn't matter. But it's about the pre-commits, right? So along the process, you're going to get agreement from the prospect, get some pre-commits, handle the objections, right? We don't have enough time to go through objection handling 101. Handle the objections, all of the objections. And then by the time it's ready to close, it's simple. Would you like to start in January or February? When would you like us to start to repair? Would you like us to follow the permit? You want us to get the permit started so we're moving along in a quick process so we can get this done by next March? It's just a real easy close at that point in time.
I really like what you said there. The assumptive close, right? Mm-hmm. And the clear takeaways and the clear follow-up is so critically important that I do think a lot of that is lost, right? So again, those simple questions. Hey, would you like me to file the permit and get these started, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, I know you have to regroup with your team. Can I give you a call on Monday to follow up? Again, not leaving anything to chance. I think it's critically important, along with everything else that we just highlighted here.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, absolutely. So then some actionable takeaways kind of on our sales meeting and closing steps. Right.
Yeah, I mean, again, Ray really hit the nail on the head with all of this. I mean, this all goes back, and I think all of this ties in nicely to everything we've talked about, right? Obviously, being prepared, right? Asking the right questions, asking open-ended questions. I mean, I think that's critically important. We really didn't drill into that. That is one of our AltaVista's core tenets here, asking open-ended questions to the buyer. Pre-commits, right? Handling all objections, right? I know that's something that's critically important to Ray, not skirting anything, answering everything. This also goes back to being prepared, right? Understanding the objections that are potentially coming and having an answer for those, right? The assumptive closes, setting dates, setting clear parameters on what's next, right? And then the follow-up, right? Continuing follow-up, staying in front of the client, right? Making sure the deal crosses the finish line.
Yeah, Ray, you have anything to add for the actionable takeaways on this one?
No, I think that's well done. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, great job. All right, well, we're kind of getting to the end here. Here's our final kind of closing thoughts for the presentation today before we jump to the Q&A. So if you do have a question, please make sure you're putting it into that Q&A feature right there on the Teams chat. Ray, Brian, I'll let you guys jump this one.
Yeah, just real quick. So the Q&A last webinar we did, we didn't get really enough time for the Q&A. So we've carved out enough time here that if you have a question, we're going to spend time. I know everyone's probably got similar questions, so we'd love to be able to answer your questions as they come in. So I encourage you to pop those in, and Bopal, if you could handle those for us, I'd appreciate it. I will say this micro close thing is really important because it's just so easy to get small agreement along the way. And we forget that. And so as you're going through your sales process, just remember gaining agreement. It's just so easy to make the close just a transition. It's not going to be this big nugget at the end you're waiting for, and you can't swallow it because you're like, I can't ask this guy. It's like, do you want to ask the question, can we do business today? That would be the most awkward question you could ever ask somebody. Oh, can we do business today? How about, would you like us to start in March or April? Which one works better for you? That's a lot easier, right? So again, making these all seem natural, because again, a good sales rep who has good process and is natural in the way they flow is going to be incredibly successful. And what I would also say about today that we haven't touched on is you could take a B player. You could take somebody who's not a great talker. You could take someone who has to be a great listener. Unfortunately, if you're not a good listener, you can't win. But if you're not a great talker and you don't have the gift of gab and you can't just handle objections on the fly, by following all these steps, you can take the B player and make them an A player. And guys, I can tell you this, I'm working with a customer right now, and they're trying to hire A players, and they're paying big money. And how many A players are coming across their desk? The answer is zero. So and the answer is zero, okay? And they're paying big money. So would you rather have a process which you could turn a B player into an A, or would you rather go out and try to hire a bunch of A players that don't exist? And so that's really something I think is critically important in what we're talking about today.
Absolutely.
Brian Dunkel, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I obviously we appreciate everyone, carving out some time. We hope it was informative. Again, this AltaVista University, there's going to be continuous trainings, continuous sales best practices. Really, and each one of these we've talked about. I mean, each one of the different processes we went through, those could be their own standalone webinar, standalone strategies. So, for us, this is kind of an overarching approach, what we see day in and day out, what we believe is best practices. And there's opportunities for us to drill down on those even further in the future.
Yeah. My final thought would just be, if you're going to take and do something with this, take one, maybe two things and commit to doing them. If it's just simple as, I'm just going to connect to every new prospect I talk to in 2026 on LinkedIn. If you do that, it will nudge things higher, right? If you commit to saying, you know what, I haven't been the most disciplined on my CRM, I'm going to start making sure I get all the emails. if you commit to one or two really small things and take one or two pieces away from the day and just put them into your business and your process, it will have a material effect over a 12-month timeline. So that's kind of my final thought on it. Ray, I'll give it to you to kind of close us out before the Q&A.
Yeah, I think I just lost my train of thought, to be quite honest with you.
All good.
No, I actually didn't. I'm never for a loss for words. Our people can attest to that. So the AltaVista U is stemming from my experience at Xerox. Imagine working for a company that's got 50,000 employees and every sales rep goes to Xerox U for 2 weeks. And then in 6 months, you go for another 2 weeks. So we want to help our clients close more business. And so if you have sales questions, reach out to us. I mean, we're happy to just jump on a call and share best practices. It's something we're willing to do pro bono. It's just to help you get more clients. If there's something actionable where you want us to do trainings or you want us to train some of your newer folks or do some closing trainings, we can certainly build a program for that. But we're really just here. We're not here to make this a profit center. We're here to support our clients. That's it. If you guys are winning, we're winning. And we have some great folks that we share some stories with, and we have some real killers that sell. And we have companies that need improvement. And I think even within the same companies, they have people that need improvement and people that are killing it. And we're just trying to make everybody that works with AltaVista. This isn't for external folks. This is for our clients. And any way we can support you on the sales side, reach out to us.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you for joining today. That kind of concludes the slides and the general, the things we wanted to talk about. Q&A number one. Can you email the webinar PowerPoint presentation? Short answer, yes, we can send this out to everybody. It was also recorded, so it may be that it's coming out as a podcast or on our YouTube or something like that. But yes, we can share this deck and all the information today with everybody. I have a hand up. So if you put your hand up, if you could click the Q&A chat sort of button and type it in there, we can answer the questions in the Q&A or the chat function. Or if you're just putting it up to get the deck, we're going to probably send it to everyone. One question I know that came up in advance of the meeting through some things that people wanted to know about, and I'm just going to open it up here to Ray and Brian, was about text messaging and is it okay to text message people and when to text message people. So I'll kind of give that one to you guys and we'll see if some more questions roll in. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say there's nuance to that, right? And I think every situation obviously is different. My process, I would not be texting as my first touch point, but I would be texting once I've built rapport, once I've had a conversation, and once I'm trying to either set a meeting or get clear follow-up steps on a close, right? So that is, and I do think that all goes back to rapport. I think that goes back to relationship building, because at that point you've kind of knocked down some walls and barriers, and I think you can get a little bit more personal. That's my perspective on that.
Yeah, my take is my first touch is always going to be a phone call. And if you're still here because we're losing some folks, and you don't want your first touch to be a phone call, I think you need to change the way you think. Because I can only influence on the phone. I can influence in person. I can influence on the phone. I cannot influence via text. I can't influence via email. So those are my sales rules. I know it can't always happen. But persistence and consistency is really important. If a plant manager had a failing roof and he's going to have a roof replacement for that whole plant, I think you're okay texting that if he's got his mobile, just texting him saying, hey, we reached out to you. You weren't successful by call or email. I think a text is fine. I think the job dictates, right? And if the job is that large and you know it hasn't been completed, you should still be following up. If it was, oh, I have a light that's missing or a light that's not working on the front of my facility, it needs to be fixed today, I wouldn't be texting him a week from today. It doesn't make any sense. You lost that one. Put him in the follow-up process.
Yeah, I agree.
The monthly reach out, right? Make sure he or she gets in the monthly reach out.
Yeah, here comes a great question. Any tips and tricks with implementing CRM adoption with the sales team? Could we provide incentives? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do with a CRM is make it part of their job. like that becomes the assembly line of your business. So at AltaVista, we haven't talked about this, but from an account manager to a sales rep, everything we do is in Salesforce. So you have to log into Salesforce to work at AltaVista. An account manager runs your account through AltaVista. So there's no option not to use it. A salesperson can't make a phone call at AltaVista without logging into Salesforce. So if you make it part of the day, you make it the assembly line of your business, or at least the assembly line of your sales process, they'll see value in it. Should you incentivize them? I don't believe so, but I think it's just this is their job, and you're going to have to find a way to get adoption. And so maybe you make it fun. Maybe you have some incentives to, for success. But yeah, make it part of their job. Make it so they have to log on.
I mean,
like let me use Outlook as an example. I never hear the question, "Oh, I'm having a really hard time getting people to use their Outlook." Well, because their emails come in via Outlook, right? So because you have to use Outlook every day to open up your day. That's if you're using that as a mail provider. But make it so Salesforce, you have to open it up.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of going, Rays.
Yeah.
If we want to put work in process at AltaVista, or we want to get a sales commission, or we want to do anything, it doesn't happen. Like, we're not going to start a website if we haven't closed the project in Salesforce. A sales rep doesn't get paid on a deal if the deal is not closed in Salesforce, right? It doesn't exist if it doesn't exist there, right? So when you say CRM adoption with the sales team, well, hey guys, your sales don't exist if they're not in Salesforce.
Right. That's becomes
there's a financial incentive right there, right? You know what I mean? Like, oh, hey, I closed $1 million last month. Salesforce says you closed 50 grand. Here's your commission check for $8, right?
That's right.
Like, that's going to incentivize real fast.
Our COO was quoted as saying to one of our employees, if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. Yep. And so our company is just adopted. And again, it's enhanced their job. It's so if it's really well done, people are going to like it, and it's going to enhance their work, and it's going to benefit them. So yeah, any other questions in there, Aaron?
There are no more questions in here. I knew there were maybe one or two more that were shared before we got started.
There you go. There's a new one that came in. Did you see that? Quickest way to build rapport without the gift of gab.
Commercial.
The quickest way to build rapport without the gift of gab. And again, I've heard rapport building is asking about where somebody went to college, or what they see a picture of somebody that played golf. What's your handicap? Those are fine. I wouldn't waste too much time on those, because those aren't true. She barked, sorry. I can't tell my dog not to bark. So she's in Q&A at least. It wasn't during the actual presentation. But yeah, asking about their business, right? Tell me about your business. What's important to you? Be engaging. If you want to build rapport, be engaging. What's important to you in the buying process? Have you ever been burned by a contractor? That's one of my favorite questions, because the answer is always yes. Has a contractor ever let you down, or has a contractor ever not met your expectations? Just be engaging. Ask great questions like that about their service experiences. And again, when you're engaging like that, you're building rapport along the way.
I think it goes to the prep.
Good.
I think it goes to the preparation, Ray.
Yep.
Right. So it's a great question. Certainly some people have that natural ability just to get it rolling, but some people don't. But so, as you're preparing for the meeting, as you're driving there, if you've looked them up on LinkedIn, if you've checked out their company website profile, if you've seen that you used to both went to wherever, right? I think it goes into the preparation side of things. And then also working on things that you have identified as needing to improve, right? So if you're saying, hey, I don't have the gift of gab, and rapport building is something I'm challenged with, that's where it becomes, well, on my way to the meeting, I need to prepare. I need to have some ideas for questions to ask for rapport building. And it's, honestly, very big step just to say, hey, I'm not great at this. How do I get better at it, right? Acknowledging it, practicing it, and developing some tried and true questions, kind of like the ones Ray just gave. It starts to come more naturally through that preparation, I think, is kind of a key thing there.
And and again, if you're not closing in the first meeting, and we're typically not closing in the first meeting in a larger commercial buy, these engaging questions, they're not going to hurt you. They're only going to help you build rapport. So if you thought the first meeting didn't go so well, but you at least built rapport, I think you're going to win later. And the easier step, we talked about this on our podcast. So if you're not listening to the podcast, it's free. It's something we do just for our clients. Send that thank you note. You want to build rapport? Here's how I used to do my thank you notes. I used to pre-write my thank you notes for every call that I had when I sold for Xerox and even McLaughlin Electric. And I would mail them from the mailbox nearest their building. So I'd literally go to the post office and drop all my thank yous off. And the next day, like I went on there on Monday, Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, there's a stamped envelope that went through the post office, and it sat on my prospect's desk. It said, "Thank you for your time. I really enjoyed learning more about your business today." What does that do to closing ratios? What does that tell your prospect about your organization and how you run your business? That improves closing ratios. That builds rapport.
Yeah, game changer.
Do it. Start tomorrow. Do it.
Brian Dunkel, you got anything?
No, I think that was a mic drop right there. That's a great one.
That was it. One more question we had on the front end here is, do we have a recommendation for a CRM for a small business company? There's a ton of choice. My quick answer would be, there are tons of choices out there. I would look at multiple different ones. We use Salesforce. When you've been using Salesforce for 9 years and you live in Salesforce, it's easy to recommend Salesforce, quite honestly. We have Salesforce dev abilities. We can help people set them up. We can help people run them. It doesn't necessarily mean it's always the right tool for every organization. So there's not, I think, one right fit all solution, but my thing would be to look at things that are prevalent in your industry and test a number of them to find what's one that you're going to be able to work with, because you want to find one that you can adopt and use. If you buy it and you don't use it.
Let me interject, because I think there might be a solution. If you don't want to make the investment yet, and I think that's a good process, right? Go slow. I would go to like a Microsoft. Microsoft used to have their own CRM. I'm sure it still exists. If you go to Salesforce, you're going to pay. I mean, you're going to pay for the product, and I guarantee you, there's a Microsoft option. I can't remember what they used to call their CRM, but some not a large name provider. I'm sure there's plenty of them out there that are functional. And then try it, see if you can get adoption. Make sure it's going to meet your needs, even if it's inexpensive. If it's not meeting your needs, then it's not worth your time. The other thing I'd say about CRM adoption is that once you've up and running in a CRM, we actually have our own developers that we can start to push data and information to your CRM for you. I mean, obviously, we do that for some clients. Makes it incredibly easy for us to do business if we can link together on the lead flow. So I know there's been a lot of clients that love that feature with AltaVista, where we can just push straight to their CRM. So again, I would start with something small though. Don't go all in with a 12-month contract for our employees. Start with just your sales team on something that's a low budget item that meets your needs, and then evolve. And when that one doesn't work, the beautiful thing about it is you can export that information into your next CRM. So you won't lose your contact info. You won't lose any of the work that you put into that.
Yeah. The Microsoft one, right, you're looking for is Dynamics 365.
Right. I don't know how much it costs, but not many people are using it. It's probably pretty inexpensive. So it might be worth a shot.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's it on the questions, unless anybody else wants to throw one in there, or we had any other ones, Megan Bopel, from before we got started. But other than that,
there is one more.
Oh, all right.
When it comes to follow-up, how do you stay persistent without crossing the line into being too pushy? And that is a phenomenal question. I think that does come with experience. I think that does come with some seasoning. But again, to Ray's point, if a client has expressed a need, right, you're simply doing your job, right? So these don't have to be crazy touch points. They don't have to be 6-paragraph emails. It can be, hey, just checking in, following up on our meeting from Monday, right? I wanted to follow up on our email response. Hey, I just left you a quick message, right? And I think in this business climate, if you're following up on a need, you're never going to be too pushy. Now, look, I'm not going to say reach out 6 times a day, right? Or
Yeah,
every
right.
day, and give it some time. But again, if there's a need, you're never going to be too pushy.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think you're going to border on being pushy, right? I think if you're erring on not being pushy, you're probably not going to win. I mean, I'm never asking you to be pushy, right? But a good persistent salesperson is going to continue to ping that prospect. You might want to ping them. Let's say you went all in for 2 weeks on a phone, email, text, and you didn't get anything. Maybe 3 weeks later, you ping them with a quick email. Hey, any idea when that roof RFP is coming up? Just something quick, something easy. But if you let it go, then it's gone, and you can't let it go. And that's one thing we see across our client base. I heard a client say that guy didn't respond to me. He ghosted me. I'm done with him. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, no, that's the wrong approach. You're just getting started. You're just getting started,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, one that I do, we use DocuSign. We can just hit resend out of DocuSign, remind, right? So it's another just quick little touch point, right? Sometimes, again, our proposals are dated to start on a certain day. If a decision hasn't been made, I'll just update it and say, hey, I just updated the proposal from the start date being December 1st to January 1st. Can we schedule a call to talk next week? And so other ways of just kind of creating value to move it along, right? Like, hey, I want you to have the most current proposal in front of you, right? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Things like that, right? You're kind of deflecting it away from saying, I'm just trying to follow up with you and close this deal to, I want you to have the most current information in front of you. I want you to have a proposal that's signature ready, right? Little things like that. And I also think in the sales process, what's the timeline? Those important questions. What's the timeline for the decision on this? What does the next step on your side look like? Oh, we're going to meet with our team on Thursday. Great. Can we schedule a call for Friday to go over any questions that come up during your meeting? Right?
Yeah, and I think
Little things.
one more thing I want to add to this because I think it's really appropriate. The worry about being too pushy. I was in the electrical business. We were dialing through the BOMA directory, and one of my inside guys was calling this guy like once a week, and he basically said, "If you call me again, I'm going to blacklist you in BOMA." Well, anyone who's doing business in BOMA, you realize how small that organization and your representative city is. So he called me. The prospect called me and said, "If you call me one more time, I'm going to blacklist you." So I went back to the reps desk. We used note cards back then. We were using like index cards. I took his index card. I tore it up. I said, "Don't ever call this guy again." Lo and behold, he called him the following week, and he gave him a job. It's like he had totally forgotten because the need changed for the prospect. His electrician didn't show up. And then when we reached out a week later, he's like, "Yeah, my electrician didn't wake up, Rage." I was like, "Oh my God, we were this close to getting banned." But how is he going to blacklist us? I mean, again, my guy shouldn't have called him again. We made a mistake, but it didn't even hurt us. So err on being pushy. You won't be pushy, but if you don't err on being pushy, you're going to miss a lot. And always be professional. And again, if it's 2 weeks later, I think just a reminder email makes a whole lot of sense.
Yep. Cool. I think that's it on Q&A. Unless anyone pops anything in here last minute or mine's not loading up, I think that's all of our questions.
Gopal, did we have any questions that were presented earlier that we haven't really addressed today?
No, I think we hit them all.
addressed all questions that were submitted during registration.
Great. Well, we appreciate you guys joining us. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Kind of got that last slide up here. We will get the deck out to everybody. If you have any questions about anything, please be sure to contact us directly. Oh, well, we got one more question here that just popped in if we want to answer it. It's what are some pre-commit questions that work well with property managers? Ray, that's going to be you because Brian and I don't sell to property managers.
Yeah, hopefully it's electrical. No. In all seriousness, can you show what industry are you in? I'd love to know the industry. Can we get an industry?
Let's see.
We'll see if they pop it in there.
All right, so let's cover it real quick. So Look, pre-commit questions are all part of a fact find, right? We're going in and we're trying to understand. I'm meeting with a property manager, and they've been in business for 30 years. They manage 200 properties, and I'm an electrician. Okay, they obviously have a host of electricians that they use, right? So I'm not oblivious to that. I'm just going to win this business. Somebody's in here. So a good fact find is about understanding the need, what their needs are, what their requirements are, and where the current vendors are dropping the ball, right? That's part of your fact find, right? So when you're doing your fact finding, the end goal in the fact find is for that client to say, my electrician's terrible. But they're not going to say that, right? So again, in fact finding, asking questions like, well, how are they doing? Are there things what do you like about them? One of my favorite things to do in fact finding is ask, what do you like about Kolb Electric? That was my biggest competitor. Hopefully none of them are on the phone today. Sorry. What do you like about Kolb Electric? And they'd say, well, they do a pretty good job at this and a pretty good job at that. Well, I knew when they said they did a pretty good job that there are problems. So now I can say, what concerns do you have? Right? So now we've got information flowing, and now we're in this great fact find. And so when she says, or the buyer says, look, here's the deal. The owner knows them well. They've been here for 20 years. It's going to be hard to get them out. And my pre-commit might be, well, wouldn't it make sense to have a backup provider for a service call that they can't make, or just to have a second look at a proposal? Maybe there's things that they can't handle that we could have. Would that be something we could look at? And that's a great pre-commit. A great pre-commit. You could maybe use something on the lines of, what's your buying process look like? Well, we're going to have 3 bidders in this. Is this going to be a price decision only? I love this one because they're not always, and there's a lot of last look going on, and we know all about that. Yeah, this is going to be a price decision. And so if they say that to me and I think they're telling me the truth, my pre-commit, if I want that business, is going to be, if I'm the low bid, can I have this job? And I'm going to look them in the face when I say that, because if they look away, I got no chance to win. So I love that pre-commit when you think there's some inside ball going on, because it'll spark conversation, because guys, there is inside ball going on. We know that there's people that are probably the incumbent to get the job. So even if that's going on in your buying process, you can still win. You can still win. You can still carve a job or 2 out. So again, it really depends on the situation, but hopefully that helps.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's really that's it for today. Thanks again to everybody for joining us. We really appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to come attend the webinar. Follow-up questions, you can send them through our website. You can, oh, wait a minute. Well, we have one more question here, and we're going to close this. We're going to answer one more of the Q&A. It just came in, and then we're going to call it here. So what do you do when you get a request from a client for an estimate only because they have 2 competitive bids and they are happy with their existing contractor? Sometimes it feels like a waste of time.
Yeah, I'm going to take this one. And so look, here's my rule: face to face, right? If you're going to go into a property manager or a plant manager, facility manager, and they've got a job of material, it's material, right? It's not a service call. I need to get face to face. If the buyer won't meet face to face, that means you have no chance to win. That means the 2 bidders are going to own the account, and you're simply wasting your time. When you're in with the prospect, you have to do the fact finding we talked about in the previous dialogue, right? What are your buying criteria? I'll share with you a great story. My father-in-law sold printing in casinos in Atlantic City, and unfortunately the buyer was a bit unscrupulous. And his comment to my father-in-law was, yeah, you print in here, you got to take care of me. And my father-in-law's business practices were that he wouldn't do that. So he can't win, right? There's 2 other guys that are sort of taking care of this guy. It's inappropriate, but he did. So my father-in-law's objection handle was, well, wouldn't it be nice if you had somebody that was on the up and up? I think it's a great objection handle. It's a classic. And the guy's like, I could use a guy like you. He closed 1 out of 3 print jobs. So even when he wasn't doing what these other vendors were doing, which was totally inappropriate, he was still able to close. So you can still close. And I think what I would say to a prospect is, look, I know you've got ABC and XYZ in here. What do you like about them? It's the same dialogue we just had. Oh, they do this, they do this. Are there any concerns? Let's uncover some concerns. Let's try to eliminate one of them from the bid process and substitute you. You're not going to get to a 60, 70% closing ratio, but you're going to improve your closing ratio. And I have done this successfully in my career 10 out of 10 times. This is Xerox 101. Tell me we can't win. Tell me our products stink, and they did. And we're going to win that deal because we were face to face. If you can't get face to face, you can't win. Don't waste your time. And then when you tell them, hey, look, it's really important I get face to face with my clients and my prospects so I understand their needs. Maybe you should catch me on the next one. That'll get them to the meeting. And that's how this whole process works. Because again, McLaughlin Electric had 0 customers in 1995. In 2002, I had 900. They weren't making new customers. I was just stealing them. And I was stealing them by doing these things that I'm talking about. Literally going in, what do you like about them? Oh, they're pretty good. Oh, I love that because that means they stink. Oh, they're amazing. They never make a mistake. And one of my comebacks would be like, okay, so you have a contractor that never makes a mistake. Can I have his name and number? Because I might need to sub this guy some work. And come on, contractors always make a mistake. So you're always able to undercut, you're understanding 1 or 2 things that they're doing poorly that you can pivot to. But you can only do that face to face. And I'd still make sure you build rapport. If you haven't built rapport, you're not flipping this one. You've got to build rapport first.
I'm going to go, Ray, I'm going to add one here. You and
Go
I
for
in a
it.
recent email exchange, you said, we're talking about a customer and you said, well, hey, what are they doing for their SEO and PPC? And I said, hey, they have different vendors for each one, brought it up, very happy with both. And you just said, stay in front of them because the time will come when they won't be.
That's right. We had that
And so
conversation today about a very large client that is a nationwide client, and we do very little digital for them. And I said to Aaron, I said, we're going to play the long game. Their vendor will make mistakes. We better be in position when they make those mistakes because we will be the heir apparent. And that's when I say we're playing the long game.
Yep.
I'm not going to go in there and try, like somebody just told me they're perfectly happy and I can't uncover anything. I'm going to have to play the long game.
Yeah. And I just think it goes back to speaking to kind of everything we've talked about today, to long-term sales mindset, staying in front, understanding consistency, making sure, you know what I mean? All these little things we've talked about all throughout this, kind of that's the micro example. So where you have the 2 competitive bidders and you feel like you're out, don't go bid it if you can't get face to face, but stay in front of that person.
Yeah. And again, plant seeds. Like when you can't win, if you know you want to do business at the International Paper Plant in Norfolk, Virginia, and you need to do business there and you can't win, right? You can't just plant seeds. Well, look, can you keep me in mind for something small? I know it makes sense. A great pre-commit would be, I know it makes sense to diversify your supplier base and your vendor base. Could I at least get on your approved list so when you have a repair, I'm available, and I can do the next time you have a repair, I'll have it done same day for you. Right? Go get it. Yeah. And again, you didn't win the RFP. You're not gonna, but you're gonna just build some rapport. You're gonna get these micro closes, and eventually, I'm telling you, there was one company I gutted. I gutted one company. I can get her on as a testimonial because she's retired from the business by doing this, by just getting face to face and figuring out what they were doing poorly. And then the irony is they were doing everything poorly in the same customer. So I didn't even have to ask anymore. I'm like, I'm sure their emergency service pricing's astronomical. And they're like, how did you know that? And I'm like, well, I have copies of all their bills. I mean, they were ripping people off on those emergency service calls. They're killing people. So we pivoted to that. They couldn't get to a job. Same day repairs were really important. So we'll do same day repairs. No questions asked, same day repairs. Now we could do that. So you don't want to overcommit, but McLaughlin Electric that's what we were known for. So there's always an issue with their current provider. It's your job to find that issue and then magnify it and make the flip.
Yep. All right. Well, everybody, we appreciate you staying through the whole thing, the Q&A. Again, we're going to send this out to everybody who registered. Thank you very much for attending. Stay tuned for future episodes of the AltaVista angle where we talk sales and also possibly some future AltaVista webinars. So thank you, everybody. That wraps us up for today.
Yeah. Merry Christmas and happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Go get them.